the city of Buffalo is the best planned city as to its streets, public places, and grounds in the United States, if not the world. Frederick Law Olmsted.
In 1868, Frederick Law Olmsted was the most famous landscape architect in North America. With his partner, Calvert Vaux, he had designed Central Park in Manhattan. And Prospect Park in Brooklyn, the two largest and most popular public parks in North America. Now, Olmsted and Vaux were being courted by other cities interested in creating great public parks. One of the first to call was Buffalo, New York. In the years after the Civil War, Buffalo was the center of America, the place where the Erie Canal ended, linking east and west. It was among the most productive and wealthy industrial cities in the nation. But it would soon be known for something entirely different, the first park system in America. Buffalo would change forever, the way cities are planned and scenery preserved.
Well, when Olmsted was invited to come in 1868, Buffalo was really a booming city. Its industry was flourishing, its transportation was flourishing. It was also the center of a growing agricultural region. It was a time to spend money on municipal improvement.
Olmsted took a one-day tour of the city in August of 1868. He immediately saw that Buffalo needed a park, desperately.
A comprehensive park scheme is desirable because the immediate environs of the town are not at all attractive, and escape from Buffalo to anything like rural quiet is difficult and disagreeable, if not impossible.
But Olmsted also saw that the city had very good bones.
The original city plan of Buffalo was laid out in 1804 by Joseph Ellicott, a surveyor who'd worked in Washington with Pierre L'Enfant. He took the idea of a radiating city plan. Olmsted thought this was a really brilliant idea. It was a very unusual plan for an American city.
On the tour, Olmsted was taken to 3 sites local citizens thought suitable for Buffalo's version of Central Park. But within a week, Olmsted let Buffalo know that his plan would not be Central Park transplanted upstate. It would be something much more ambitious.
He comes up with the idea that this city would be better served with 3 parks in different parts of town.
3 unique sites, 3 unique designs. To the west, along the Niagara River, Olmsted and Vaux created the front, with a terrace for viewing the scenic Niagara. On the east side, they placed the parade, with grounds for marching and for active sports. To the north, the park eventually known as Delaware would be a pastoral landscape, a country place within the city. But there was more to the plan. They linked 3 parks together with a new type of public space, the parkway.
A parkway is a series of roads and walks adapted exclusively for pleasure travel, occupied by turf, trees, shrubs, and flowers. Thus, at not great distance from any point of the town, a pleasure ground will be suitable for a short stroll, a playground for children, an airing ground for invalids. The way itself would thus be more park-like than town-like.
The ways were park-like, but they were also Parisian. The wide boulevards mirrored the grand streets of the city of Paris and brought a bit of French romance to upstate New York.
Olmsted and Vaux were very knowledgeable about Paris. The idea of having circles where the parkways come together in Buffalo was something taken from Paris. And the way the parkways link the city to the main park was also Paris. The main parkways are 200 feet wide, which is a very wide street, obviously, and they were lined with multiple rows of the American elm. Old pictures of the parkways lined with those trees are just spectacular. They're truly cathedrals of green.
Buffalo accepted the Olmsted-Vaux plan, and in 1870, work began on what would be America's first park system.
Olmsted and Vaux are always thinking in comprehensive terms. So when they design a park, it's not just to be a pretty place or a place to play baseball. It's always connected to the rest of the city and the way the city functions. He saw this whole city as being a kind of organism of living, working, commerce, all connected by a very functioning system of movement.
By 1874, the three parks were largely complete and a resounding success. Olmsted and Vaux had ended their partnership 2 years earlier, but Olmsted continued to design parks for Buffalo. And his interest in the area extended beyond the city to the great natural wonder, Niagara Falls, 20 miles to the north.
Olmsted had come to Niagara Falls even as a youngster, and he was very impressed, as many people were. And when he started to work here in Buffalo in the late 1860s, it renewed his interest in the falls. He was very upset by the fact that much of the land around the falls had been bought up in parcels by private individuals.
The local property owners had lined the banks of the Niagara River with a shoddy mix of factories and tourist traps. For Olmsted, the buildings were defacing a landscape of sublime beauty, not only the great waterfalls, but an entire waterscape.
The illumined spray and mists and fleeting water, the water-worn rocks, the rare beauty of the old woods, the infinitely varied play of light and shadow, refractions and reflections, and much else that is indefinable.
Olmsted had laid out a philosophy of scenic preservation before in a report about Yosemite Valley in California. Great natural scenery, he wrote, should be preserved from development and yet made available for everyone to see. He now brought this philosophy to bear on Niagara.
Niagara Falls was really the first big national campaign on behalf of scenic preservation. Olmsted called it the Free Niagara movement, and it could be in some ways seen as the beginnings of the national park movement.
In 1879, Olmsted and the Free Niagara movement submitted a report to the New York legislature calling for the state to buy the land and tear down the buildings that surrounded the falls. The state refused. So Olmsted began the first national public relations campaign for scenic preservation that had ever taken place in America. He used tactics that have now become familiar: public petitions, letters to the editor, and celebrity endorsements, including the writers Henry James and Thomas Carlyle, the painter Frederick, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, and the future president, Grover Cleveland. In 1885, Olmsted and his supporters won. New York State bought back the land along the riverbank and the island in the river above the falls. The new state reservation would be designed, of course, by Frederick Olmsted, and he turned to his old partner, Calvert Vaux, for help.
To be sure, their plan of 1887 was never fully implemented, but the ideals were. That is, that it should be kept as a natural site. It would be open primarily to pedestrians. What he wanted people to see there was mostly the beauty of the waterscape. The falls, of course, but he even thought the rapids were more impressive and compelling than the falls, and he wanted people to have easy viewing access. The gem of the Niagara Falls State Park is Goat Island, and to Olmsted and Vaux, that in fact was the most beautiful part. Areas of it are as they would have known it, especially the three sister islands. You can walk out onto the third island the way Olmsted and Vaux could have and see the rushing rapids coming on. If the mist is rising at the right angle, you don't see the casinos and the towers on the Canadian side, and for a brief period, you could put yourself back in time. Olmsted would work in Buffalo for 3 decades. After his retirement, his sons carried on his business. He and his successors really had a great role in shaping the city of Buffalo.
But over the years, parts of the Olmsted system were changed. Much of the front, the park along the river, became a traffic plaza. On the east side of Buffalo, bulldozers reduced the once elegant Humboldt Parkway to a commuter freeway. It was called Progress. But more recently, another kind of progress came to Buffalo. A grassroots community group that would become the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy was formed in 1978. The Conservancy now manages and protects all of the Olmsted parks in Buffalo in a public-private partnership with the city. Well over 1 million people visit these parks each year.
A park is a work of art, designed to produce certain effects upon the mind of men. The purpose of parks is to provide a feeling of relief experienced by those entering it on escaping from the cramped, confined, and controlling circumstances of the streets and town. In other words, a sense of enlarged freedom is to all, and at all times, the most certain value and gratification afforded by a park. Frederick Law Olmsted.